There is a strange mercy hidden in the cracks of our journey. We do not often see it while we are walking. The dust blinds us, the shadows confuse us, and the bends in the path make us question whether we are lost forever. We imagine that the road should have been smooth, the skies clear, and the way straight. But the truth is, if the road had been flawless, our hearts would never have turned toward the one who calls us home. It is the broken stones beneath our feet that remind us of our weakness. Each stumble is a reminder that we were never meant to walk in our own strength. Each detour whispers that the place we thought would satisfy us was never the true destination. And every fracture in the path is like a crack in the world's illusion, letting the light of eternity break through. The broken road teaches us that comfort is not the same as purpose. Many have walked the easy path and found only emptiness at its end. But those who have endured the roughness, the disappointments, and the aching turns, these discover that the home they long for is not made of earthly walls, but of divine embrace. There is something in pain that chisels away our illusions. Loss pulls back the curtain on what we once idolized. Failure teaches us that we are more than our achievements. Loneliness reveals that even the most loyal of human companionship cannot fill the cavern within the soul. These are hard lessons, but they are mercies disguised as wounds, for through them the broken road turns our eyes away from the dust and up toward the horizon where a greater hope waits. We may wonder why the journey had to hurt, why the map of our life could not have been drawn with straight lines, but a straight road might have led us anywhere. It is the broken road that directs us to where we truly belong. The brokenness has a strange authority. It points us toward what is whole. Every wrong turn becomes a signpost, every fall becomes an invitation, every shattered dream becomes a doorway through which grace enters. And so, the broken road is not evidence of God's absence but of His guidance. It is His way of shaking us awake, of turning us from the false homes we have built in our pride, and leading us back to the true home our souls were made for. What we call brokenness is often the very hand of God, tenderly and firmly leading us where we would never have gone if the path had been smooth. The broken road reveals our weakness and reminds us that we were never meant to walk in our own strength. The broken road reveals our weakness and reminds us that we were never meant to walk in our own strength. When we first step onto life's journey, we imagine that the path will bend to our will, that our determination, our wisdom, and our strength will carry us to the places we have dreamed of. But as the days unfold, we find the ground uneven, our steps faltering, and the weight of our own humanity pressing heavily upon us. The stones cut at our feet, the unexpected turns disorient our plans, and the burdens we carry make us stumble. It is in those very stumbles that something greater is being whispered to our souls, though we are often too preoccupied with our wounds to hear it. The broken road has a language of its own, and that language is humility. It speaks softly, but firmly, saying that our power is never enough to sustain us, and our knowledge never enough to guide us without error. In the moments of collapse, when the journey feels too much, we discover the limits of our control. We realize that even the strongest will can crack under the weight of grief, and even the brightest mind cannot always navigate through the storms of uncertainty. These realizations can feel like loss, but they are in truth the beginnings of wisdom. For only when we are emptied of the illusion of self-sufficiency can we begin to understand the deeper reality that we were not made to travel alone. The broken road pulls us away from our pride and invites us to depend upon something higher, something unshakable, something beyond ourselves. Every stumble is a mirror showing us the truth of our condition. We were never meant to be perfect travelers. We were meant to be seekers, leaning not on the strength of our stride, but on the one who laid the path before us. When our knees hit the ground, it is not simply a moment of defeat, but an opportunity to recognize that perhaps the ground was where we were always meant to be, not in the posture of conquest, but of surrender. The dust on our hands, the ache in our bones, the bruises from falling are not marks of shame, but marks of humanity that point us to the reality of our dependence. The brokenness is not there to destroy us, but to expose us, so that we may finally see that the strength we trusted in was never enough to lead us home. The smooth road deceives us into believing we are in control, but the broken road corrects us. It shows us that the destination cannot be reached through sheer determination, for determination will always meet its end in the limits of human frailty. The cracks, the potholes, the sharp edges of life are all reminders that our path is not ultimately sustained by our efforts. They whisper that there is one who carries us when we cannot carry ourselves, one who guides when we cannot see, one who strengthens when we collapse under the weight of our burdens. The road breaks us, but in breaking us, it teaches us that weakness is not failure, but the very door through which divine strength enters. Pain and loss strip away illusions, teaching us that true fulfillment is not found in earthly comforts. Pain and loss strip away illusions, teaching us that true fulfillment is not found in earthly comforts. At first, we cling to the idea that happiness can be built by the things we gather, the relationships we hold, and the achievements we display. We believe that if we can only keep enough, win enough, or secure enough, then we will finally rest in peace and satisfaction. Yet pain arrives as an uninvited guest, dismantling these illusions one by one. Loss comes like a storm that tears away the shelter we built, showing us how fragile the walls of our security really were. It feels cruel in the moment, but it is through this stripping away that a deeper truth begins to reveal itself. When the treasures we valued most slip from our hands, we are forced to confront the question of what truly lasts. The comfort of wealth can vanish in a moment, the praise of others can grow silent overnight, and even the closest of human bonds can be separated by distance, betrayal, or death. These losses leave behind an emptiness we cannot deny, an ache that no earthly possession or pleasure can soothe. We often resist this lesson, trying desperately to rebuild the same illusions with new distractions. But pain has a way of breaking through our defenses again and again until we begin to understand. It is in the silence after loss that we realize how often we mistook shadows for substance. What seemed so solid now appears fragile, and what seemed indispensable now reveals itself as temporary. We begin to recognize that the fulfillment we were searching for cannot be secured by things that fade, for nothing that fades can truly satisfy the eternal hunger within us. The hunger itself is a clue, a reminder that our souls were created for something beyond the reach of time and decay. Pain clears our vision to see this, and loss carves out the space in which this truth can be planted. There is a strange mercy in suffering, though it seldom feels like mercy in the moment. Pain unmasks the idols we trusted, exposing their inability to sustain us when life grows dark. Loss makes us reach beyond the visible, beyond what we can hold, and compels us to seek what cannot be taken away. These experiences, as devastating as they are, become a kind of refinement, burning away what is false so that only what is eternal remains. Without them, we might spend our lives chasing illusions, never realizing how shallow they truly were. The very things we once thought of as tragedies become the turning points that awaken us. The comforts we mourned, the dreams that shattered, the relationships that slipped away, all of these, in their absence, point us toward a fulfillment that cannot be lost. The soul learns, through its deepest aches, that what it was made for lies beyond the reach of earthly comfort. The stripping away is not to leave us empty, but to prepare us for a fullness that only the eternal can provide. Every stumble, detour, and failure becomes a signpost guiding us toward what is eternal. Every stumble, detour, and failure becomes a signpost guiding us toward what is eternal. At first, such moments appear only as evidence of defeat. The stumble embarrasses us, the detour frustrates us, the failure crushes us. We imagine they are marks of wasted time, proof that we are unworthy, reminders that we have fallen short of what we were meant to accomplish. Yet when viewed from another angle, each of these moments carries within it a hidden direction, a quiet pointing toward a greater reality that we could not see when the road seemed to be in our control. The stumble slows our pace. It disrupts the illusion that we were striding forward with certainty. In falling, we are forced to notice where we are and how fragile our footing truly is. The dust that clings to our skin after a fall is not there to humiliate but to awaken. reminding us that the ground beneath us is not as firm as we once believed. In the pause that follows, our eyes may be lifted to something beyond the ground itself, beyond the path we thought we were choosing, and toward the one who laid the path with a higher purpose. The detour unsettles our expectations. We thought we knew the way, thought we had the map well in hand, and suddenly we find ourselves on a road we never intended to take. It feels like wasted effort, like a cruel redirection, but often the detour protects us from paths that would have destroyed us or awakens desires we did not know we had until the scenery changed. The long way around teaches us patience, and patience enlarges the soul, giving us eyes to see that the destination is not only about arrival, but about transformation along the way. What looked like delay may have been the very hand of guidance, shaping us for what lay ahead. Failure is the hardest signpost, because it pierces the pride we cling to most desperately. To labor towards something and see it collapse is a wound that reaches deep into our identity. Yet failure is often the very place where we discover that our worth is not bound to our success, and our destiny is not chained to our achievements. In failure we meet the truth of our dependence, and in dependence we discover a strength not our own. The collapse of our plans creates the silence in which a greater plan can be heard, one not rooted in human ambition but in eternal purpose. Together, stumbles, detours, and failures weave a strange tapestry. They are the markers along the road that tell us we are not meant to build our homes here, not meant to cling too tightly to the dreams that fade, not meant to define ourselves by victories that pass. Each misstep becomes a redirection, each delay a preparation, each collapse an unveiling of what truly matters. When we look back, what once seemed like chaos reveals itself as guidance, a series of signs gently, and sometimes painfully, pointing us toward what is eternal. What looks like brokenness is often God's tender hand redirecting us to our true home. What looks like brokenness is often God's tender hand redirecting us to our true home. At first, the breaking feels merciless, like the destruction of something we depended on, like the shattering of a future we had carefully imagined. We cry out in confusion because what we built with such care now lies in pieces, and the dreams we once held close slip through our fingers like sand. It is in these moments that despair tempts us to believe we have been abandoned, that nothing remains but the fragments of what was lost. Yet what seems to us like ruin can, in truth, be a redirection, a mercy disguised in a form too severe for us to recognize until time has revealed its purpose. The breaking strips away what we once trusted, and though we resist it fiercely, it is in that stripping that clarity comes. Often we are too attached to the structures we built for ourselves, too content in the temporary comforts that shield us from facing the deeper hunger of the soul. The breaking shakes those walls until they fall, not to leave us homeless, but to lead us toward the place where home was always waiting. It is as though the hand of God dismantles what we thought was strong, so that our eyes might turn to what is truly unshakable. There are moments when brokenness takes the form of loss so heavy that it feels unbearable. A relationship fractures, a hope dissolves, a chapter of life closes in a way we never anticipated. In those moments it is difficult to believe that anything good could emerge. Yet often those very losses protect us from illusions that would have kept us wandering endlessly. We may not see it immediately, but the road we thought was straight would have carried us far from where we were meant to be, and only in the breaking do we find ourselves redirected toward the way that leads us home. Brokenness has a strange way of uncovering the truth. When what we relied on is taken away, we discover how fragile it truly was. When the path we thought was certain crumbles beneath us, we realize we were never as secure as we believed. This realization is painful, but it also creates the opportunity to grasp what cannot be shaken, to turn toward the source of security that endures beyond every collapse. The tender hand of God is not always felt in gentle comforts, but is often hidden within the very circumstances that undo us, because undoing us is the only way to rebuild us in the truth. In time, we come to see that the breaking was not abandonment but guidance. What we mistook for ruin was a redirection. What we thought was the end of our story was in fact the removal of false paths and false hopes, so that our steps could be set on the way that leads us home. The very pieces that seemed scattered beyond repair become markers of grace, reminding us that even in the breaking, we were being led with tenderness toward what is eternal. The rough path is not punishment but mercy, shaping our hearts to long for the embrace of the one who waits at the end. The rough path is not punishment but mercy, shaping our hearts to long for the embrace of the one who waits at the end. It is easy to believe that difficulty means rejection, that hardship is a sign we have been forgotten, but the truth is often the opposite. The road that wounds us, that tests our endurance, that presses against our strength until it is gone, is often the very road that forms us into people who can recognize what we were created for. If life were always gentle, if the way were always smooth, we might never lift our eyes beyond the present moment. We would cling to temporary comforts as though they were enough, content to mistake the passing shadows for lasting joy. The roughness of the road awakens us from this illusion. It shakes us, strips us, and stirs within us a longing that cannot be satisfied here, pointing us toward a home beyond the horizon. Mercy wears many disguises, and one of the hardest to accept is the form of hardship. The obstacles we face, the pain that lingers, the weight we carry, all of these feel like burdens unfairly laid upon us. Yet through them, our hearts are trained to recognize that the true rest we seek is not found in reaching the end of earthly striving, but in the presence of the one who calls us beyond it. The rough path loosens our grip on what is fading and strengthens our desire for what endures. Without the ache of longing, we would never search for the eternal. Without the bruises of the journey, we would never recognize the healing embrace that waits for us. Every difficulty along the way teaches the soul to look higher. When dreams crumble, when strength fails, when our best efforts fall short, we are confronted with our limits. These moments are not punishments, but reminders that we were not designed for self-sufficiency. The mercy of hardship is that it redirects our hope from ourselves to something greater. It is a mercy that humbles, that refines, that burns away what cannot last in order to prepare us for what cannot be lost. Each step along the rough path becomes a lesson in dependence, and each lesson deepens our hunger for the one who alone can satisfy. There is a paradox in the rough path that only becomes clear with time. What feels like cruelty reveals itself as compassion. What feels like distance reveals itself as guidance. What feels like breaking reveals itself as building. The heart learns through suffering that it cannot rest in the fleeting comforts of this world, and in that realization it begins to yearn for the true home, the place where every longing is met and every tear is answered. Without the hardships, that yearning might remain dormant, hidden beneath layers of distraction and ease. The mercy of the rough path is that it uncovers the truth and awakens the soul to the embrace waiting at the journey's end.